Hello, everyone, and welcome to my screencast about what's a language anyway. We're going to talk about languages and dialects and the difference between those. We'll start right away with the first question. What is the difference between a language and a dialect? Well, there's no technical difference for as far as we can tell. Linguists like to repeat the grand old observation of Max Weinrich that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. But there's always a but. The difference is deeper than a snappy aphorism suggests. The fact that language and dialects exist separately implies that there are small distinctions that linguists can make, but there are no objective differences. Well, when is a language, and when is a dialect, you might wonder? There's one general rule. If you can understand a language without training, it is said to be a dialect of your own language. For example, everyday English speakers might be able to understand Cockney, which is an English dialect. Given the general rule that normal, everyday English speakers can understand Cockney, we can confirm that Cockney is an English dialect. But, the second but of today, there are other exceptions on that general rule. For example, Scandinavia. The people think they have distinct languages because it is spoken in other nations. Danish, Swedish, Norwegian are all referred to as separate languages, whilst nothing proves them to be real languages. More like dialects, actually. For example, a Dane, a Swedish man, and a Norwegian woman could be casually sitting in a bar and having a conversation, each in their own language, and they would have been able to understand each other. So, is our general rule busted? I think so, because we still have some other examples that bust the thing. For example, in China, where the main language is Mandarin, but in other languages or regions, they speak other languages. I'm sorry. For example, Cantonese. Cantonese is a whole other language than Mandarin, so since it is spoken in the same country, you'd think Cantonese is just a dialect of Mandarin. But no, Cantonese is a whole other language. Some other examples. Moroccan and Jordan, who are two different countries who have different Arabian versions of Arabian language, can still converse in the modern Arabic version of the language. Czech, Polish, and Slovak, who are three different countries, can converse in a different language just like the Scandinavians could. Can we then determine when one language ends and another begins? No, we cannot. For example, in Ethiopia, in a small area, we encountered a lot of dialects, and we can't really say when one ended and another began. They just like wove into each other. There's no real boundary of when one dialect ends and another begins. Mostly, it depends on the villages, and others have mixtures, but there are always people in between. Then how did languages come to exist? In the beginning, all of the languages were dialects. Every town had another one, but recently, unwritten rural dialects became written with grammatical rules. So that out of these few dialects, real languages came to be, like French, Spanish, and Italian. And all of those languages originated from dialects from another language, Latin. Then we have one thing that we always think that a dialect is very unsophisticated. People are seen as a bit of the lower class when they speak in dialects. Well, one person who you all might know busted this myth actually. Sacha Baron Cohen. Someone named Nathan once asked what Sacha spoke, and Sacha said Uzbek. Nathan asked breezily, "Is that a dialect?" And Sacha, almost snapping, replied, "No, but it's a beautiful language." Language and dialect depend from people to people, as we might say. There's another fact that proves that dialects aren't unsophisticated at all. For example, Archi, a dialect which is spoken in the high Himalayan mountains and in which one verb can have more than 1,500,000 verb forms, which is a whole lot more than in any other language on the world. Dialects aren't unsophisticated, sometimes they're even harder to manage than a normal language. And what can we conclude out of this presentation? What's the difference between a language and a dialect? The best attempt to impose a definition on this difference is the one of popular usage. Like Sacha Baron Cohen said, a language has written rules next to being spoken, whilst a dialect has not. But for some people, their dialect might become their language. So mind what you say and be careful about these judgings about dialects. Have a nice day. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.